Well, hello, Endow ladies. Simone here, Director of Program Growth, and I am with Rebecca. I call her Becca. Rebecca Wraith, welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, thank you.
Welcome. She is a health coach and community specialist with CMF CURO, which I'm going to ask her to explain in just a minute. But I've known Becca now for, I don't know, a little under 10 years, and we both taught theology together at St. Mary's Catholic High School in Phoenix, Arizona, and had many theological conversations back and forth. And the subject of one of her great passions that I'm so glad we get to talk about today is this document, Regula Pastoralis by Pope St. Gregory the Great. So before we get into that and why Endow women and the men who listen should care about this church document, this writing from our earliest centuries of our Catholic inheritance, Becca, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simone. So like Simone said, I work for CMF CURO, and I have been with them for about a year. One of my passions, as she mentioned, is just kind of the human person, are striving for holiness, striving for truth, understanding, relationship with the Lord. And I think, past experiences, different things in my life have really kind of like led to that striving. And now I get to do that as a coach, working with our members as they kind of like set goals and really kind of integrate their whole wellness into living in this, our catchphrase is living fully alive. And I think, I have my background, like Simone said, I was a high school teacher, also working just with students in general, doing virtue formation, we started a house system together.
Yes.
So that was fun.
I had the seniors, you had the freshmen. I remember that was just the first memories of you as a first year teacher taking on these freshmen, but you did it so well. And I so enjoyed being in the classroom right across the hallway from you and all of our chats. You also have a master's degree from the ITI in Austria, which I've studied for a brief summer, but that's a huge privilege. Tell us about that school.
Yeah, so ITI is it's the International Theological Institute, but it's an international school that has a undergraduate degree all the way through master's in theology. I received my Marriage and Family Theology degree there. So that's kind of, again, this intersection of the truths of the faith with the human person. So it's psychology, theology, really kind of understanding that. And so, I was there for 2 years, really an incredible experience in that not only are you in Europe, so, you're getting to have this cultural experience, but none of my classmates were from America. So, I was getting to learn and discuss all of these beautiful things with people with entirely different backgrounds and different kind of ways of thinking and, and opening up that worldview, as well as it's an East and West school. So there's Byzantines, you really get to kind of, breathe through both lungs.
I thought that was one of the highlights of my experience there. I was only there for 3 weeks, but the Byzantine Ukrainian liturgy and mass, and you really do get this sense that yes, it's in Austria, so yes, it's coming from a Western bias, but there is a strong Eastern presence there that really, I think, is a little taste of John Paul II's dream of the church breathing with both lungs. So this document you are so passionate about. Now it's regular.
And my first interaction with it was at that school, actually.
Exactly. So it translates to the rule of the pastor. So Pope St. Gregory the Great, who is I think the second of 4 greats of our popes, wrote this document for pastors, for shepherds, but you have a claim that because we are in the time of the laity, where so much of lay people like you and me who are, yes, we are called as lay people primarily to renew the temporal order, but there are some of us who work in the church or at Catholic institutions or apostolates, like the both of us do, that are aiding in a more direct way the ministry of the ordained priesthood. And so in that sense, even if you're not, even if you're just not just, because the laity is ordered to renewing the temporal order, right? That this document doesn't just have value for pastors, but it has value for people who work in church. I will just call it professional church and apostolate, and then also for Endow women who are at the forefront of forming their children, their communities, their societies. So why is this document one of your favorite documents? What changed in you when you read this?
Yeah. So he wrote this document like in his first year of the papacy, and it was kind of a response to the Rule of St. Benedict, which also I went to Benedictine College, shout out. So like there's a special place in my heart for the Benedictine Rule. But I think, so already that like caught my eye of like, okay, this was a rule. He basically was like, great that religious communities have this, but all pastors need some sort of like rule and focus. And so already I was like, okay, like what is this thing? And also it was written in 591. So, 1500 years ago, you study theology and it's like, no one's talking about this document.
Yeah.
And so I think that captivated me too, of like, well, what is this? And I will like say, as we kind of start this, definitely there are things in here where it's like, this is talking about the priesthood. And it talks about like the vestments and a lot of the imagery he uses. It's like, okay, clearly this is a document on the beauty of the priesthood. And I think reading it also can like help us more understand that and like be grateful and like pray for priests. But then, yeah, I was completely captivated and like intrigued with just his understanding of the human person. I mean, it's split up into 4 sections. In the 3rd section, he really is like, it's like a treatise on how to teach. And so that's why I think when I first brought it up, we were probably talking about teaching, and I was just like, you need to listen, you need to read this document, because he shows this psychological understanding that it's like, people are not all in the same place. And kind of like what you were saying, like, you don't just have to be working in the church. Like I say this with my coaching members all the time. It's like, we are called to live our faith and to evangelize and to do this in so many different spheres. And so it's like having an understanding of the person in front of you, having an understanding that like, you can't evangelize the same way to all these different people. Like we can't just look at someone and say like, oh, you have to understand this truth in this way, because that's just the one way of explaining.
Yeah. I love that Thomas quote that I can't remember, but one day I'll memorize the Latin and just pull it out of my convenience, where, whatever's transmitted is received according to the one who receives it. So you don't receive it as it's given, you receive it as you are when it is received, to the mode of the receiver. And I think that's what you're talking about here. Especially the Christian thing is a relational thing. It's a communal thing. So there is no formula in a sense. Yes, we have the doctrines and the dogmas, but evangelizing is an art, because of what you just said. The human person's right in front of you, and everybody in some way, everybody is called to do that, to transmit the truth according to the people that the Holy Spirit has put in front of them, in the way that they can best receive it and respond to it and say yes to it. So that is awesome. I regret not reading it when I was a teacher, formally speaking. But again, like you said, this isn't just for teachers. So
yeah. And he calls, even what you were just saying, like he calls caring for souls the art of arts. Like that's his thing, is like, this is this like beautiful thing. And it's like, we need to understand this as pastors and see it as that.
I love that. And that's also very important for the role of women in the life of priests, the feminine genius, because there is this gift to the particularity of the person right in front of you, this gift of the other that women have a capacity for that men don't. So to me, this is also something that, if he's talking about evangelizing in an artistic sense, this also in a special way involves women and the feminine genius. So you have here part 2, the life of the pastor. I'm going to read this out loud. It is necessary that he should be pure in through. I don't know if that's correct. Pure in thought, I think is what.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Pure in thought, exemplary in conduct, discreet in keeping silence, profitable in speech, in sympathy, a near neighbor to everyone, in contemplation, exalted above all others, a humble companion to those who lead good lives, erect in his zeal for righteousness against the vices of sinners. He must not be remiss in his care for the inner life by preoccupation with the external, nor must he in his solitude for what is internal fail to give attention to the external. Wow.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So that's his big like outline. And then in that section, he really goes through, and each chapter is based on one of those things. And he kind of like, goes in and like decompresses all of those different things. And I think he does it also, if you are, you're going to read this, hopefully, ladies listening to this, that he does it in this like beautiful teaching way where he gives all these analogies, and it's just phenomenal. But I think the thing that really, it's maybe not the most important, but something that I think is so crucial for our time is that one about being like a neighbor in compassion. And he talks about how, like, as people working with others, like, we're going to see human error. We're going to see our own human error, but we're going to see human error, misunderstanding, sin, and that it's like, unless we are like rooted in compassion and rooted in prayer, and then we can also like accommodate, but like also raise those people up. But it's like, if we just focus on accommodating without the prayer, we're going to be lost. But if we also just focus on the prayer without the compassion and like without being led to that, we're lost. And I think that to me, that's like one of my favorite aspects of this document, because it's just like, that's the call of the Christian right now, is we have to be rooted in the truth. We have to seek time with the Lord and be like formed there, but then that has to move us to the other person, and we can't do the other without the other. It's just like, the both and.
I mean, you're right. It is very Benedictine, or at Labora, right? You pray, and that prayer flows into fruitful work. But I have to believe, and I do believe, that if prayer, the interior life, is done right, if you really are open and receptive to communing with the triune God, that will bubble up into paying attention to what needs attention in the external world.
Yeah.
So I love that's kind of the flow, the rhythm, the movement, if you will, of the Christian who's constantly referring back to God, and then from that union can more prudently, virtuously, effectively engage the task that he is called to complete for the Lord. And there's a lot of beauty in that. So what about,
I'll say one thing, a quote from there. He says, basically, it's like the truth itself engaged in prayer on the mountain, and then he worked miracles in towns. And so it's like that distinction of like, like that's the incarnation, like we're following Christ. It's like, you have to go to the mountain, you have to have that, but that time up there like helps you,
it's where everything flows from effectively. There's a lot of people who are so stressed out about what's the task, what's my mission, what am I supposed to be called to do, but you can't really, you'll have peace about that in prayer. And there's a lot of work that has to be done beforehand in prayer, in relationship with God, before you have a sense of the direction, and what Pope Benedict says is the decisive direction that the encounter points you to. So it's very human of us to just like want to get to the business of what we're called to do. But, Jesus spent 30 years in ordinary life and then 40 days in the desert before executing his mission. You have here that part two of the text of the 4 parts. Chapter 5 is your favorite chapter. Tell me why.
Yeah, so that's the section we're talking about right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You it's right there.
Yeah, I think so. And I think in all the different areas, I don't know, in all the different things that I've seen, I think my passion for this really started just with getting even into marriage and family theology, seeing that, like, yeah, that the Lord, I mean, he became man, to spend time with man, but like, Athanasius, God became man so that man could become God. Like, it's the whole idea of like being lifted up, and that we as partakers in all of this are called to do that in the world, be the leaven in society, but like to be in society. And I think as a teacher, like, that was a huge thing for me. It's like, we have to be with our kids, they can, this, you were good at this. Like, you have to be, they know when you're being inauthentic or not. They're like,
yeah, you cannot escape self. If you want a brutal, severe examination of conscience, become a teacher.
Stand in front of a classroom of 18 oh my gosh.
Or exposed, at least in prayer, you're just exposed to God. But with students, you're exposed to, at a time, one class at a time, about 20 something judgmental little faces that can sniff out hypocrisy in you.
Yeah. Especially when you're teaching theology.
Theology. And you, it's almost like you're forced into charity, unless you're completely narcissistic and delusional and don't care about this vocation of teaching, right? But because you see what Gregory saw, which is that this necessity of compassion, and also the artist. I mean, no year was the same for me. It's the same material, sure, it's the same content, but no individual student's the same, no collective class is the same. And so even though the content is substantially the same, the presentation is so different. So the work that it takes to retranslate it, kids in 2013 are, when I started at St. Mary's, what year did you get there, Rebecca? I can't remember.
So I got there 2016. Yeah.
2016. Okay. So when I got there in 2013, 2016, by the time you got there, is different. And now the school is different, because what kids are like in 2022 is different, especially in this time and culture.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The post-COVID world.
Post-COVID world is like so crazy. So
current COVID world.
Yeah. You have the Jesus had a specific face, and if we're supposed to be little Jesuses, little Christians, little Christs, we have to specifically respond to what's happening now, because Christianity is an event happening now. So I really appreciate that about Gregory. Now you also say, and let me know if I'm moving too fast here, but you also in part 3. The part 3 is how the ruler should teach and admonish the subjects by his holy life. And you said the prologue is especially helpful. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So in the prologue, he gives this beautiful analogy of the harp and the harpist. And again, I love analogies. So whenever like saints like Catherine of Siena or whoever, are like giving their, that's how I taught. That's how I think that it's just helpful. It's also very Benedict. So, and I think also, side note, I said this in here, I really think Pope Benedict took a lot from Gregory the Great. Like they just seem like kindred spirits. And so I think there's a little bit of that in there too, of my love for this. But yeah, in that section, he talks about the harpist and the harp, and that a good harpist knows that you can't pluck each string the same way, the same harshness, the same direction, the same place. It's like to make this beautiful music, you have to know, and you can't be too severe, and you have to just do it just correctly. And it's that same concept of like, when we learn how to teach, we have to know who we're talking to. And in the following sections, like he talks to, okay, when you're talking to servants, when you're talking to people that are like very passionate, people that go through extremes, when you're talking about poor people, when you're talking, and he doesn't like stigmatize or, put someone in a box.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do you reach them and understand where they are? And to be able to be a good physician, to be.
Yeah. I'm curious to know if, and I love Pope Gregory for other reasons because I hadn't encountered this text until you brought it into my life. But I wonder if there was, there had to have been women in his life influencing him in this way, because I just keep thinking about the feminine genius here, just the specificity of the tenderness toward the human person and all of their individuality. I don't know. Do you know anything about his relationships with women or?
I should have done, I know that there was a queen in Germany, and this was like the Lombards, I don't know the history enough, but he did a lot with communications with this queen in Germany, basically to like help her work with her husband. He ended up converting to Catholicism, but it like restored a bunch of peace. So I know he definitely was like, had, people that he was in contact with, presumably. Yeah.
I mean, the queen, now that's something interesting I want to look into.
Yeah, it sounded like a very St. Catherine of Siena, writing all these letters to different people.
Yeah. Like, hey, Bishop, hey, Pope, here's what's going on with your people.
Exactly.
Your priests are becoming bureaucrats, which we have a problem with today. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. Now, you mentioned to me in your notes that chapter 37 is fantastic. Do you happen to remember what's in chapter 37? I feel like you're an expert on this document.
Oh gosh. I have notes. Let me look. I think he was just talking. I mean, it's that same section of the book where he's just talking about the different like how to communicate, how to heal different people. But I think 37 was really talking about how like when you're healing, like when a surgeon is looking at a sickness, like they're looking at the malady and they're looking at the infirmity, and like they have to kind of look at both and to be able to really heal. And I think he's saying, that similar thing of like, we need to be cognizant when we're looking at people. And when we're even looking at our society, it's like, okay, there's the distinction, I guess, between like the actual thing and then the person.
Yeah.
And it's like when we're looking at sin, when we're looking at woundedness, it's like, okay, we can look at the thing and say it's bad. And we can, look at the addiction, look at the trauma, whatever it is. But that's distinct from the person there that we need to, see and help them,
And that God intends to heal them through the body of Christ. The connection with how crucial it is to have a robust prayer life is that you have to also, in turn, allow God to look at you and to heal you as a priest, as a lay person, because you can only steward someone's healing to the extent that you've been healed. And so maybe this part of the rallying cry of Pope St. Gregory the Great here is that, look, if there is a block to you seeing the person, then perhaps you have not allowed yourself to be seen by God in the right way, in the way that's necessary to receive your own healing, to then steward other people's healing. And I wonder if what do you think about that being the reason? Part 4, the last part, is why he ends on looking like self-awareness, basically, and looking at one's faults.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly, I think that's exactly it. He finishes with this like, here's how you be a pastor. 3 steps. First, you have to know where you are. You have to know yourself. You have to do the examine in like the real examine, like the what's there. Where am I lacking? Where are the areas in my life I need healing? And then like turn to the Lord in prayer, like bring that to prayer, be in that, walk in those moments. And then, you can do the St. Francis thing, preach the gospel at all times when necessary,
Right. If St. Francis said that, which I don't think he did.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Gregory has his own way of saying it.
I know, but yeah, I mean, your words first of all, to be able to say words with certainty means that it's a life that you're then living, right? We know as being high school teachers that if we're preaching any aspect of the gospel that we haven't quite fully reconciled within ourselves, our students will find that vulnerability, will find that lack of faith and push it, right? So too, in this scenario, I mean, yeah, preaching the gospel is always going to have words, but your words really will be clanging cymbals, not just because maybe you're not a nice person, which is what St. Paul seems to be referencing in Corinthians 12 and 13, but that you yourself have truly received and encountered God's healing and compassion. And I think that's why, and really, unless that's happened for you as a priest or a lay person, there is a lack of humility and a lack of I mean, the thing that threatens the evil one the most is humility.
Yeah.
Because humility says, I know God has all the power, right? And I can access it when I really know that. And I really know that because I know who I am in front. I know my name and I know my face in front of God. And he is with me and has healed me and continues to heal me. In that space, then we can really and we're all called to be priests, prophets, and kings by virtue of our baptism, right? We really can be the priest who makes a space for the people of God in the world, who consoles, who comforts, and who leads them from Christ to the Father. So I love that he ends this treatise with that, to bring it back to that. We're not doing anything to anybody. Well, first of all, Jesus is the only healer, but we're only leading anyone to him insofar as we ourselves have been led. And there's a real humility in that, but a real glory in that too.
Yeah. And I think it's cool that it's like, this is the beginning of his papacy. And like it showed his like, I'm not worthy for this. This terrifies me.
Yeah.
And I think that's like like what you were just saying there, that's like the irony of the Christian life is you think like, oh, as I'm striving for more holiness, as I'm striving to do all these things, like I should be better. I should be this like, mark of holiness. And it's like, the more you strive, the more you realize your imperfections. And then it's like, but that's the beauty. It's like the Lord like wants to work in that and like glorify that. And like, love through that.
Yeah. It's the Christian. I love what you just said. It's the Christian comedy that you do become self-aware to the point where you realize that God using you is absolutely absurd and hilarious. And he does it anyway, because he'll use anybody that wants to be used. And this is so joyful. And this is why I think St. Thomas and others have said, holy people have a sense of humor, because I think deep down, we all know this is absolutely ridiculous that God has chosen these creatures to, bring the kingdom of God on earth, but he has, and we're here for it. So let's do it. Thank you, Becca, for doing this podcast. It's a long time coming, and for your all the work that you do in the apostolate. Before we say goodbye, any final words? And I think this year is the first year that you've done an Endow study. Is that true?
Is true. Yes.
So tell us about that experience, and which study did you do?
Yeah, so we did the letter to women. So the very beginning, and through numerous conversations with you and just some women here where I live, it was just we were looking for something to like delve deeper, and it was amazing just to kind of have that geared conversation and to have it be a little bit different than just I don't know, like a study or something we were used to to be able to see, I think, the cultural context. I love that. I love like understanding why the church wrote what it did, and then seeing like, okay, well, how does this connect to me now?
The prophetic value of church documents, who is Mater et Magistra, mother and teacher. What she has to say is saying something very personally to you and me. And I think I should call it the Endow grace, but I call it the Endow magic. So, any final thoughts on this document, or anything else you'd like to transmit to our Endow women? Anything we should know about CURO?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the more you study this, we're really delving into the concept of like man fully alive. As Saint Irenaeus, says, and I just think as you like progress towards in like a proper understanding of all of this, it's like, the more we spend time with the Lord, the more we realize we're made for community, the more we realize we need the Lord, but the more we see the beauty in others. And it's just this like balanced integration of that. And it's just, it's beautiful. And I think that's the call. And that's what we're trying to do at CURO for our members. That's the authentic healthcare we're trying to provide this community. But that's, the call of the Christian, especially I think right now.
It is. And first of all, I love St. Irenaeus of Lyon, and he's our newest doctor of the church. So right on point there with CURO being really into that these days. I do see it bringing up this concept of healing and seeking deeper healing kind of popping up kind of everywhere I look. And I think it's a work of the Holy Spirit. I just was at Notre Dame back in March, and the theme of the Yiddish Stein Conference was holy, holy, like WH, holy, 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 mind, body, soul, spirit. So there is this real cry to be healed on every level of our humanity. So great work there. And I'm going to link up CURO to this podcast and this YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you and find out more, they can do so. Thanks so much.